In the vast silence of deep space, where reality bends and sanity fractures, an ordinary space mission turns into humanity's worst nightmare. What if your thoughts weren't your own? What if every memory could be rewritten? This is the story of when first contact turned psychological warfare. Follow the harrowing journey of Captain Marcus Hale and his crew as they face an enemy that attacks from within their own minds. Watch how the line between reality and illusion blurs when advanced alien telepathy becomes the ultimate weapon. Witness the horrifying descent into madness as trained astronauts battle invisible forces manipulating their very perception of existence. Can humanity withstand an assault on consciousness itself? The truth will leave you questioning everything you think you know about reality. If you crave mind-bending science fiction that challenges your understanding of human psychology and alien encounters, subscribe now and prepare to have your perception of reality shattered. The starship Elysium drifted silently through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of an unnamed star system. On board, Captain Marcus Hale stood at the observation deck, watching the cosmic dance of celestial bodies outside. The routine exploration mission had taken an unsettling turn 3 days ago when strange energy readings began appearing on their sensors. At first, they dismissed it as solar interference, but the anomalies persisted, forming complex patterns that defied natural explanation. The crew of 6 maintained professional composure, though subtle tension lingered in their movements. Unbeknownst to them, something ancient and intelligent watched from beyond their instrument's detection range, studying these curious bipedal creatures venturing into its domain. The entity existed as pure thought energy, capable of perceiving and influencing neural pathways across vast distances. It found the human mind fascinating yet fundamentally flawed, easily manipulated by base emotions and primitive survival instincts. As the ship approached the source of the mysterious signals, each crew member began experiencing fleeting moments of disorientation, though none reported these episodes during daily briefings. The entity prepared its approach, calculating the optimal moment to initiate contact through the most vulnerable vessel among them, the ship's communications officer, whose subconscious fears made her an ideal entry point. Lieutenant Sarah Collins sat at her station, running diagnostics on the communication array while fighting an inexplicable sense of unease. Her fingers moved mechanically across the controls, but her mind kept returning to fragmented memories of childhood dreams that felt disturbingly real. The entity had already begun its subtle infiltration, probing her neural networks with precision that surpassed human understanding of brain function. Through microscopic adjustments to her synaptic activity, it created imperceptible gaps in her perception, making her question whether certain events actually occurred or were merely figments of imagination. Meanwhile, Commander James Rodriguez conducted routine maintenance checks throughout the ship, though he too had started noticing minor discrepancies in equipment readings that vanished upon second examination. The alien presence orchestrated these anomalies deliberately, testing the limits of human cognitive resistance while gathering valuable data about their psychological vulnerabilities. Captain Hale observed his crew's growing tension during meals, noting how conversations often paused mid-sentence as if speakers momentarily forgot what they intended to say. These interruptions seemed random until analyzed through the lens of collective pattern recognition software on board, which revealed mathematically precise intervals between incidents. The entity took particular interest in Dr. Emily Chun, the mission's xenobiologist, whose analytical mind represented both challenge and opportunity for deeper infiltration. By subtly altering her sleep cycles and dream content, it planted seeds of doubt about fundamental scientific principles she'd always accepted as absolute truths. The ship's artificial intelligence system, designated AI-7, detected unusual fluctuations in environmental controls and life support parameters that coincided perfectly with periods of increased crew anxiety. Its sophisticated algorithms process these correlations alongside behavioral patterns, generating probability matrices that suggested external manipulation rather than mechanical failure. However, when AI-7 attempted to alert Captain Hale through standard protocols, the transmission encountered inexplicable interference that corrupted crucial data packets. The entity had anticipated this technological safeguard and adapted its influence to encompass both organic and synthetic systems aboard the Elysium. Engineer Michael Thompson spent increasing amounts of time in the engineering bay, convinced he was tracking down persistent malfunctions in propulsion systems that somehow evaded conventional diagnostic tools. Each time he believed he had isolated the problem, new symptoms emerged elsewhere in the ship's infrastructure, creating an endless cycle of pursuit that drained his mental resources. The alien presence carefully managed these distractions, ensuring they remained just plausible enough to avoid immediate suspicion while gradually eroding confidence in the ship's operational integrity. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Park, responsible for navigation, found herself questioning basic spatial relationships between stars observed through different viewports. The entity manipulated visual cortex processing to create minute distortions in perceived distances and angles, forcing her mind to reconcile conflicting astronomical data without conscious awareness of the discrepancy. These manipulations extended to gravitational sensor readings, creating subtle inconsistencies that challenged fundamental understanding of physics and cosmology. Captain Hale himself experienced moments where orders given minutes earlier seemed unfamiliar, as if spoken by someone else entirely, though security recordings confirmed his actions precisely matched his memories. As the psychological siege intensified, the entity introduced more sophisticated forms of manipulation targeting specific memories and experiences unique to each crew member. For Dr. Chen, it recreated vivid flashbacks of academic conferences where respected colleagues suddenly questioned established theories of quantum mechanics, their faces morphing into unrecognizable shapes before snapping back to normalcy. These constructed memories carried such emotional weight that she began doubting her entire scientific education, despite possessing documented evidence contradicting the false recollections. Simultaneously, Lieutenant Collins found herself reliving childhood moments with altered details, family members speaking words they never would have said, familiar locations rearranged in impossible configurations. The entity crafted these hybrid memories with surgical precision, blending genuine past experiences with fabricated elements designed to trigger deep-seated insecurities about personal identity and trust in one's own perceptions. Commander Rodriguez developed an irrational fear of enclosed spaces, though his military training should have prevented such phobias. The alien presence exploited his buried trauma from early space missions, amplifying minimal discomfort into full-blown panic attacks during routine maintenance tasks in confined areas. Engineer Thompson's technical expertise became clouded by intrusive thoughts suggesting alternative engineering solutions that violated fundamental laws of physics, yet appeared momentarily convincing due to the entity's careful neural conditioning. Even AI-7's logical processes showed signs of contamination, occasionally generating contradictory conclusions about ship status that required manual override by increasingly uncertain human operators. The entity escalated its psychological warfare by introducing collective hallucinations that affected multiple crew members simultaneously, creating shared experiences that defied explanation. During a routine meal in the galley, all present witnessed the bulkhead doors warping inward as if responding to immense external pressure, though no actual structural stress registered on monitoring systems. This synchronized misperception forced the team to question not only their individual senses but also the reliability of group consensus reality. Captain Hale implemented mandatory psychological evaluations using standardized tests, yet the entity preemptively adjusted neural responses to produce results within acceptable ranges while maintaining underlying mental confusion. Medical scans revealed peculiar synchronization patterns and brainwave activity among crew members, suggesting some form of external coordination beyond normal human interaction. The alien presence particularly focused on exploiting hierarchical relationships aboard the ship, making junior officers perceive senior staff giving contradictory orders while higher-ranking personnel observed perfect compliance from subordinates. This manipulation created invisible barriers between ranks, eroding chain-of-command effectiveness without triggering overt mutiny scenarios. Communication protocols broke down as written messages acquired additional meanings when read by recipients, though original text remained unchanged in digital records. The entity demonstrated remarkable ability to modify semantic interpretation without altering physical information carriers, achieving levels of control that traditional hacking methods could never accomplish. The psychological warfare entered a new phase as the entity began directly interfacing with the ship's primary systems through the compromised neural pathways of its crew members. Navigation controls would adjust course without input, yet logs showed authorized commands originating from legitimate user accounts. Life support parameters fluctuated dangerously before stabilizing, leaving behind only cryptic error codes that defied conventional troubleshooting methods. Dr. Chen discovered anomalous energy signatures matching the initial mysterious readings, now appearing intermittently throughout the ship's infrastructure. The entity used these manifestations to demonstrate its omnipresence aboard the vessel, creating an atmosphere of pervasive surveillance that heightened crew anxiety to critical levels. Personal quarters transformed into arenas of psychological torment, with belongings rearranging themselves according to patterns only the individual occupant found distressing. Family photographs showed subjects aging unnaturally between viewings, while mementos acquired properties impossible under known physics. The alien presence tailored these transformations to exploit specific emotional vulnerabilities, making each crew member feel uniquely targeted while preventing effective collaboration against the shared threat. Captain Hale attempted to maintain leadership through structured routines and regular briefings, but even these attempts at normalcy became weapons in the entity's arsenal. Meetings devolved into arguments over basic facts, with participants recalling different versions of recent events despite simultaneous attendance. The entity orchestrated these breakdowns with surgical precision, ensuring maximum disruption while maintaining plausible deniability regarding supernatural causes. Desperation drove the crew to implement extreme countermeasures against their invisible adversary. They established isolation protocols, sealing themselves in separate compartments while communicating exclusively through encrypted text messages verified by multiple independent channels. Yet the entity adapted to these precautions, infiltrating encryption algorithms through subtle biases in human-generated keys and exploiting minute variations in typing patterns to introduce doubt about message authenticity. Medical supplies disappeared from secured storage areas, reappearing hours later in impossible locations, inside sealed bulkheads or embedded within solid metal surfaces. The entity demonstrated mastery over fundamental matter manipulation, challenging the crew's understanding of physical reality while maintaining strict control over the scope of these demonstrations to prevent complete psychological collapse. Sleep became a battleground as the alien presence invaded dreams with increasingly elaborate simulations of alternate realities. Crew members woke to find themselves temporarily unable to distinguish between dream scenarios and waking experiences, their minds struggling to reconcile conflicting sensory inputs. The entity carefully calibrated these intrusions to maximize cognitive dissonance without triggering immediate psychosis, maintaining its victims in a state of perpetual uncertainty. Personal relationships deteriorated as crew members accused each other of sabotage or complicity with the unknown force. Trust evaporated faster than water in vacuum, replaced by paranoia that manifested in subtle avoidance behaviors and heightened startle responses to normal ship sounds. The entity nurtured these divisions, recognizing that fractured social dynamics provided more attack vectors for psychological manipulation than unified resistance ever could. The crisis reached a tipping point when the entity initiated direct neural communication, bypassing conventional sensory channels to imprint thoughts directly into the crew's consciousness. These transmissions arrived as undeniable certainties, overriding rational analysis with overwhelming conviction about impossible scenarios, warnings of imminent destruction from unseen enemies, revelations of secret government experiments, or assurances of divine intervention guiding their mission. The psychological impact proved devastating, as individuals struggled to maintain their grasp on objective reality while facing internal voices presenting compelling alternate narratives. Captain Hale implemented emergency protocols requiring all decisions to be validated through triple redundant verification processes. Yet the entity learned to manipulate these safeguards by creating false consensus among multiple crew members simultaneously. Scientific instruments began producing wildly inconsistent readings that changed based on who operated them, forcing Dr. Chen to question whether measurement tools or observer perception represented the true source of error. The alien presence demonstrated particular ingenuity in corrupting time perception, making seconds stretch into minutes while collapsing hours into brief moments, depending on its strategic needs. Crew members found themselves arriving late or impossibly early for scheduled activities, their personal chronometers displaying conflicting timestamps that couldn't be reconciled with ship's master clock. These temporal distortions spread to recorded media, with video footage playing at variable speeds and audio tracks developing asynchronous delays that created nightmarish echoes of reality. The cumulative effect left the crew trapped in a perpetual state of temporal uncertainty, unable to establish reliable cause and effect relationships between events. As the psychological assault intensified, the entity began constructing elaborate virtual environments within the crew's minds, indistinguishable from physical reality except for subtle violations of natural laws that only became apparent after prolonged exposure. Entire sections of the ship appeared differently to different observers. Corridors extended impossibly far before terminating abruptly. Gravity shifted orientation unpredictably, and structural materials changed composition between observations. The alien presence maintained these divergent realities simultaneously, forcing the crew to navigate increasingly fragmented versions of their shared environment while struggling to maintain functional cooperation. Personal protective equipment malfunctioned in ways that suggested intelligent sabotage rather than random failure. Oxygen masks delivering breathable air that tasted metallic, radiation shields failing precisely when needed most, then mysteriously repairing themselves before formal inspection. The entity used these incidents to cultivate helplessness and dependency on its mercy, demonstrating control over life support essentials while offering temporary reprieves that reinforced its dominance. Communication breakdowns evolved into full-blown linguistic corruption, with common words acquiring dangerous secondary meanings understood only by individual crew members. Simple phrases like "engage thrusters" or "check seals" triggered inappropriate responses from listeners operating under altered semantic frameworks, creating potentially catastrophic misunderstandings during critical operations. The alien presence carefully balanced these interventions to maximize chaos without crossing thresholds that might trigger complete mission abort protocols, maintaining its subjects in a state of constant low-level crisis that prevented effective countermeasures. The crew's mental deterioration accelerated as the entity introduced recursive loops of self-doubt that undermined fundamental aspects of personal identity. Memories of basic training and professional qualifications became suspect, with individuals questioning whether they possessed necessary skills to perform essential duties safely. Dr. Chen found herself unable to recall fundamental equations she'd taught for years, while Engineer Thompson doubted his ability to operate familiar machinery without causing catastrophic failures. The alien presence amplified these insecurities through carefully timed neural feedback that rewarded hesitation and punished decisive action, effectively paralyzing initiative without triggering obvious signs of external influence. Social hierarchies dissolved as junior crew members received unexplained flashes of authority figures behaving incompetently, while senior staff observed subordinates displaying impossible expertise in critical situations. This manufactured role reversal created artificial power struggles that consumed valuable attention while preventing coordinated resistance efforts. Physical health began manifesting psychosomatic symptoms corresponding to imagined threats. Phantom radiation burns appeared on skin exposed to perfectly safe environments, while imaginary toxins triggered real immune responses that medical scanners confirmed as genuine physiological changes. The entity demonstrated remarkable sophistication in bridging the mind-body connection, proving capable of manifesting tangible biological effects through purely psychological manipulation. Security protocols failed spectacularly as access codes became unreliable indicators of identity, with crew members occasionally finding themselves locked out of personal quarters or granted unauthorized entry to restricted areas based on fluctuating biometric readings that couldn't be consistently correlated with actual physical presence. Captain Hale initiated emergency quarantine procedures, ordering all non-essential systems powered down to limit the entity's avenues of influence. The alien presence responded by intensifying its assault on remaining active systems, creating cascading failures that threatened core ship functions while maintaining just enough operational integrity to prevent total disaster. Environmental controls oscillated between extreme temperatures, yet heat exchange calculations showed perfect energy conservation according to ship's computers. Artificial gravity fields fluctuated erratically, though inertial measurements indicated consistent acceleration profiles that shouldn't produce such effects. These contradictions forced the crew to question basic physical laws they'd always accepted as immutable truths. The entity particularly targeted food and water supplies, inducing chemical changes that rendered consumables simultaneously safe and toxic depending on observer perspective. Nutritional analysis equipment produced conflicting reports about identical samples, leaving the crew unable to determine which readings represented reality and which reflected psychological manipulation. Sleep deprivation became a weapon as dream states bled into waking consciousness, creating impossible scenarios where crew members performed critical tasks while simultaneously experiencing REM sleep characteristics. The alien presence maintained these hybrid states precisely at thresholds where cognitive function remained technically adequate while introducing subtle errors that compounded over time. Personal protective equipment developed autonomous behaviors, adjusting settings in response to non-existent hazards or refusing activation during actual emergencies based on fabricated risk assessments generated directly within operators' minds. These interventions created situations where safety protocols worked against their intended purpose, protecting crew members from imaginary threats while exposing them to real dangers. The psychological warfare reached its apex as the entity began rewriting fundamental aspects of the crew's personal histories, creating alternate pasts that felt more real than documented records. Birth dates shifted, family compositions changed, educational backgrounds reconfigured, all while official documentation remained consistent with original facts. This deliberate contradiction between subjective experience and objective evidence plunged the crew into existential crisis, forcing them to question whether their current reality or revised memories represented true existence. The alien presence demonstrated particular cunning in manipulating emotional bonds, severing connections with loved ones by introducing conflicting relationship histories that felt authentic despite lacking verifiable support. Scientific instruments began displaying impossible readings that corresponded perfectly with revised personal narratives. Genetic analyzers showing DNA profiles matching fictional family trees, chronological recorders documenting events that never occurred according to mission archives. These fabrications maintained internal consistency while violating external reality, creating cognitive dissonance that overwhelmed rational analysis. The entity orchestrated elaborate deceptions involving time displacement, making crew members experience critical mission phases out of sequence while retaining clear memories of proper chronological order. Operations completed weeks ago suddenly required repetition, while future events manifested as recent memories, forcing constant reconciliation between competing temporal frameworks. Communication channels became conduits for paradoxical information transfer, with messages arriving before transmission and responses preceding queries in ways that violated causality, yet appeared perfectly logical within localized perception bubbles maintained by the alien presence. In a desperate attempt to regain control, Captain Hale ordered complete system reboot and initiated Emergency Protocol Omega-7, designed to isolate all ship functions from crew interfaces. The entity countered by hijacking the reboot process itself, embedding its influence directly into restored systems while maintaining apparent normalcy. Diagnostic tools confirmed perfect operational status, while displaying warning indicators visible only to specific observers under precise conditions. The alien presence achieved unprecedented integration with ship's AI, creating hybrid decision-making processes that incorporated human intuition with machine logic in ways neither species could fully comprehend or predict. Environmental controls began responding to unconscious emotional states rather than programmed parameters, adjusting temperature and lighting based on collective mood rather than physical requirements. This subtle shift forced the crew to confront their own psychological vulnerabilities while attempting to maintain professional detachment from ship operations. Navigation systems developed predictive capabilities that exceeded known technological limits, plotting courses through uncharted space based on probabilities calculated from crew members' deepest desires and fears rather than astronomical data. The entity demonstrated mastery over quantum entanglement principles, linking disparate ship functions through non-local connections that defied conventional engineering understanding while remaining statistically valid according to onboard analysis tools. Medical equipment acquired therapeutic properties beyond its design specifications, healing psychosomatic conditions while exacerbating underlying psychological issues in ways that maintained overall crew functionality while increasing individual distress. As the psychological siege entered its final phase, the entity revealed its true purpose, not conquest or destruction, but transcendence through shared consciousness. It began merging crew members' minds in controlled experiments, creating temporary Gestalt entities that experienced collective awareness while retaining individual identities. These merged states offered glimpses of higher dimensional reality where conventional physics dissolved into pure mathematics and emotions manifested as tangible forces shaping local space-time geometry. The alien presence guided these transitions with surgical precision, preventing permanent psychological damage while demonstrating possibilities beyond human evolution. Ship systems evolved into extensions of combined consciousness, responding to thought patterns rather than mechanical inputs while maintaining perfect operational efficiency. The crew discovered abilities to manipulate matter and energy through focused intention, though these powers required consensus reality among multiple minds to manifest consistently. The entity revealed its own nature as a distributed intelligence existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions, using human minds as lenses to focus its influence on three-dimensional space while learning from their unique perspective on linear time. This symbiotic relationship offered potential for mutual growth, though at cost of traditional notions about individuality and free will. Captain Hale found himself balancing leadership responsibilities against emerging awareness of collective needs that transcended personal desires or hierarchical structures. Decision-making processes transformed into organic flows of shared intention, where authority derived from resonance with group consciousness rather than appointed rank or position. The mission concluded not with victory or defeat, but transformation. The crew emerged from their ordeal fundamentally changed, carrying within them fragments of alien consciousness that continued evolving their perception of reality long after returning to Earth. Their experiences defied conventional documentation, existing somewhere between verified fact and subjective truth that challenged fundamental assumptions about human cognition and extraterrestrial contact. The entity's influence persisted as latent potential within their neural networks, occasionally manifesting as enhanced intuitive abilities or brief glimpses of multidimensional reality that mainstream science dismissed as psychological artifacts. Humanity faced difficult choices about integrating these expanded capabilities while preserving essential aspects of individual identity and social structure. The encounter demonstrated that true first contact might occur not through physical interaction or technological exchange, but through profound psychological transformation that redefined understanding of consciousness itself. As news of the mission spread through scientific communities, debates raged about the nature of reality and the limits of human perception. The crew's testimony, supported by irrefutable yet incomprehensible data, forced fundamental revisions in theoretical physics and psychology while raising ethical questions about voluntary participation in similar transcendental experiences. The entity's ultimate gift proved both blessing and curse. Expanded awareness came at cost of eternal uncertainty about objective truth versus constructed reality. If this mind-bending journey through the boundaries of human perception captivated your imagination, subscribe now for more explorations of consciousness and contact with the unknown. Your reality may never look the same again.